the 17th century, the pistol wasn't yet common in duelling. The typical sword for a duel was rapier style, including a slightly shorter than normal rapier called a short sword or a small sword. They could be stylishly formed and elaborately decorated. We imagine they could be carried as status symbols or fashion items by the better off. Duels would often be prearranged and organized, with a referee and a few attendants, but duels were not usually public. Some say that the duel between Charles Williams and Edmund Morgan took place in a field below Penrose, on what is now the rugby ground of Newport High School Old Boys. Furthermore, the exact location is sometimes referred to as the Island or Fantasy Island, lying alongside the Avon Floyd, with Penrose up above. The duelists were related, so what could have come between them? Well, both were from prominent families. Charles' great-uncle and Edmund's father were both sheriffs of Monmouthshire at different times. It's possible that Charles' father was sheriff too, as there is a Thomas Williams in the list of sheriffs in 1651. The sheriff's duties included enforcing the law and raising taxes, so they may not have been popular with everybody. We don't know much about Edmund except that he was a little younger than Charles and that he had a wife and children. But we now have some understanding of Edmund's family and where they lived to go with the additional information about Charles Williams. Charles' father's inheritance of properties may have laid the foundations for his son's career in finance. And we now know that Charles went on to lend money to important people and that he was conversant with international economic affairs. The earliest record of this financial sphere of activity is that legal document from 1676, when Charles was in London, about the loan to Sir Herbert Evans of Pencreag. The house lies down the hill from Llanhennock and overlooks the Usk. Sir Herbert had 4 daughters who would need money for marrying, and Charles provided the funds that could satisfy such a requirement. This loan of £130 had such an interesting return on it. Viewed in depth, the document is sensational.
I'm at a very old Llanhennock house, previously named Pencreag and Pencreek, but now Pencreag. It has a connection with Caerleon, for in the 16th century it was home to 2 people who in time lived where the priory is now. They were John Morgan and his daughter Eleanor. It's also linked to Caerleon through Charles Williams. Here we have the indenture between Charles Williams and Sir Herbert Evans of Pencreag. It's dated the 13th of November 1676. And for us this is an important document because his signature is on the second page. As you can see there, Charles Williams down at the foot of the page, and I'm absolutely certain that that is our Charles Williams because of the letters that he wrote later in life to John Hanbury, his friend, and it is the same signature in those letters. This also states that Charles was living in London in 1676 because within the document there is reference to Charles Williams, formerly of Caerleon and now of London. The document essentially covers security on a loan of £130 and a commitment to repay £20 a year for the life of Charles Williams. Now, the £130 was a lot of money in 1676, but relatively small to the loans that he later had with other people. So this was probably one of his early loans. Now, the will of Sir Herbert Evans mentions this commitment of £20 a year for the life of Charles Williams to his executors in his will, because he died a few years after this loan was agreed. A later loan, 6 years later, actually in 1682, again confirms that it was our Charles Williams, a similar signature and for a much larger amount, and that confirms again that Charles was resident in St Martin in the Fields, which is the adjacent parish to where he eventually went to live in Covent Garden. The rest of his life, as we now know, became another 44 years. Therefore, I think most people would agree that Charles got a pretty good deal. Confirmation, if any, was needed of his shrewd dealings in matters of finance.
It was in 1691 that Charles moved into Covent Garden and acquired famous neighbours. Among the loans he made after that time are those to the distinguished Mansell family and another to a start-up business known as the Bank of England. His associates included rich and powerful figures whose respect he earned and who sometimes came to him for advice. That he was buried in Westminster Abbey in 1720 is testament to his status. Although there's nothing suggesting he had a direct interest in politics, he was certainly a Whig and his opinions would have been widely sought. A neighbour of Charles and a witness to his will was the celebrated sculptor and woodcarver Grinling Gibbons. He was the man who carved St Paul's Cathedral pulpit. When Charles died in 1720, he was worth almost £80,000, today over £9 million. Most of that was left to his great friend John Hanbury, who would look after the building of the school in Caerleon. Out of the £4,000 that Charles allocated for a £500 school, John Hanbury would also see that the balance was invested wisely to provide income to run the school indefinitely.
We are at Pontypool Park gates. A gift from the Duchess of Marlborough to John Hanbury for being a trustee of her late husband's estate. Charles Williams's greatest friendship, particularly in his later life, was with the Hanbury family of Pontypool. It is said that Mrs. Hanbury was able to lobby Queen Anne through her friend the Duchess of Marlborough to secure a royal pardon for Charles's involvement in a duel. However, no record of such a pardon has ever come to light. Now, Bridget Hanbury was the wife of Major John Hanbury, a generation younger than Charles, and the person he befriended probably around the time that Major Hanbury became an MP for Gloucester in 1701, perhaps before. The Hanburys had this house here at Pontypool as their main home. They also had a house in Soho in London, not far from Charles's Bow Street. Although this was part-time, as Major John needed to manage his iron-making business here in Monmouthshire. They had at least 4 boys, and Charles Williams proved to be a very useful mentor to all of them, as he would often visit their school in Chelsea. His godson was Charles Hanbury, possibly named after Charles Williams, and he became the appointed heir to Charles's fortune, taking the name Hanbury Williams as required through the will.